I'm Susan. Welcome to Tea and Games. Too hot, which is not unusual here. The tea today is Roasted Chestnut Black tea from Tea Runners. And the mug is my little Christmas llama mug. I don't know what llamas have to do with Christmas really, but we will be talking about games played over the Christmas holidays. And for those of you on Hat Watch, yes, I did knit this. I used some kind of a self-striping yarn. I don't think, it's a fairly lightweight yarn, but I don't think it was a sock yarn. I made it like a long time ago. And just kind of a made up pattern. Let me see here. We had some time off between Christmas and New Year's. And during that time, we had some friends over to play board games. They were not board gamers, but they wanted to see what this board game thing we do was all about. So we ordered pizza and we played New York Slice while we were waiting for pizza. It is a set collection game. The pieces look like pizza pieces. It's an I slice, you choose mechanism with nice toasty cardboard pizza, which really does look like pizza. We kept saying while we were playing the game how hungry it was making us, like I wish the pizza would get here. Whether or not you will have time to complete the game before pizza is delivered depends upon when you order in your own pizza delivery system. The pizza actually got here right before the end of the game. But we still had a little bit, I think we had one more round to play when the pizza was delivered. We also, they wanted to play a co-op, or at least one of them specified that they specifically wanted to do a co-op for this game day, which turned out to be more of kind of a half game day. And so we had picked out a whole bunch of entry-level welcoming games for people who had never seen a modern board game before in their life. And I feel like New York Slice fits fairly well into that too, but we had picked out some for the main event. But because they specified co-op, some of our co-op games are really pretty brutal. Actually, if you are not familiar with them, they can all be pretty tough. So we chose Horrified Universal Monsters with the easiest monsters and the beginner monsters. And they didn't get all the way through the whole game. They had to leave before the game was over, which is oddly enough not uncommon when we have people over to play board games. I'm not sure why. People are just very, very busy and they schedule a whole bunch of things in a day and they never devote a day to a single thing. So it's not uncommon for us to have people over to play board games and halfway through a game, they'll say like, we need to wrap this up because we got to go. So they've got other places to be. So we didn't get all the way through that. I do not think that it was a winning game though, because we really weren't optimizing our turns. I struggled to teach them both New York Slice and Horrified Universal Monsters. Or maybe they struggled with the rules of both of them, or maybe they struggled with the rules because I struggled to teach it to them. Teaching board games to someone who has never seen a modern board game is surprisingly difficult. They did have a hard time learning both games. But I think that they kind of were starting to get the hang of Horrified, though we were over halfway through by the time they left. So we might give that another shot some other time. I would have been happier and the game day would have been much, much more successful if we had picked the game and we would not have picked Horrified, because some of the other games on the stack that we picked were more rules light than that, and they did have trouble with all the rules. And also co-op games, this is just something that Robert and I have observed, and maybe it's just us, but we feel like in general, co-op games are harder than games of their same weight, which are competitive rather than cooperative. And that may just be our perception, but it does seem that way. If you look at a BGG weight and you look at a co-op game, you're going to go, and that co-op game is much harder than this other game that's at that same weight. But they had fun anyway, and we had fun. And now on to the Christmassy stuff. For Christmas, not last year, but the year before last, we got Macro Crime City as kind of an us present, is what we call it. Like a present that's for both of us that we collectively decide upon prior to Christmas and wrap up and put under the tree. This year we went for an expansion to a game we already have. I had picked out a couple of choices, and Robert and I discussed them, and we decided to go for the only expansion that I had mentioned, and that is the Tides of Ruin expansion for Sleeping Gods, which we have played. And we were not satisfied. We were kind of disappointed in the ending that we got for Sleeping Gods. But we like the story, we like the concept, we like the gameplay, except for combat. We hated combat. And I know you're going to say in comments, but Distant Skies, the sequel to this, is got a better combat system. That's not going to matter. I mean, we may get Distant Skies at some point in the future, but the fact that combat is better than in Sleeping Gods is not going to make any difference to us, because we just hate combat. There's never going to be a game that we're going to play where after the game we're going to say, boy, I loved combat in that game. Combat was so cool. That is never going to happen. There's no game context that has combat in it in which we're going to like it. It's just a matter of how much we hate it. And we really kind of hated combat in this quite a bit. But we like the skill check system in this quite a bit too in Sleeping Gods, and we are looking forward to doing Tides of Ruin sometime later this year. But we gotta schedule out a block of time in which the dining room table can be taken over by a journey into the unknown. But we did enjoy the gameplay, except for the combat in Sleeping Gods. And I mean, that's just going to be a thing with any game that has combat in it. After the game, we're going to say, wow, that was a pretty good game. Too bad it has combat in it. Otherwise, it would have been great, and that's just us. But the family got us, because they know we are big Scooby-Doo fans, and they are too, Scooby-Doo the board game. Now, there are a whole bunch of Scooby-Doo branded board games out there and stuff, so this is the one you want. If you want a Scooby-Doo game, this is a co-op game in which you play as the various characters in Mystery Inc., including Scooby. And this is the retail version. This thing was on Kickstarter. The Kickstarter board version has a whole bunch of different monster villains. This has 3. It has the Creeper, the Green Ghost, and the Ghost Clown. That's the other one. And it has color-coded minis. And the minis are really nice. I mean, really nicely done. The Kickstarter deluxe version thingy has painted minis, but I think these are just fine with color-coded. And the monsters are very nicely detailed. It also has a cardboard mystery machine that you put together, and the deluxe version has a mystery machine made out of something else, and I think it's pre-assembled. Let me just look at something here. If I can pull out the mystery machine. It has a nice insert. So you can see what the retail version of. The retail version of the mystery machine is actually pretty nice. It's not too cheesy. And it's got room for 2 people in here. You can see 2 standee spots there. Because you can never have 2 people in the same area unless they're using the mystery machine. And I'm turning this the wrong way to put it back in there right. this game has a really, really nifty mechanic. We've played this a few times now at both 2 and 4. This is the monster deck. And unlike in Horrified, the monster deck is kind of infinite. You are not good. The monster deck is not a timer for when the game ends, because there is a card number 41, and I'm not seeing it here right off the top of my head. Of course I'm not. That tells you to reshuffle. So you'll start over again. So the monster deck is not a timer. This little symbol here activates the monster abilities. Some of them just have like monster movement. But you should always plan on the monster ability being activated, because most of the cards, the monster ability will be activated. But what I really like is the mechanism for the draw deck. Oh yeah, and you can use the mystery machine. You got 3 tanks of gas, so use it well. Green Ghost, Ghost Clown, Creeper. And then here are the player cards. Everybody has a special ability, but you can only use it once per game. There's a slot up here. You put a sandwich token in there, and when you use your special ability, you eat the sandwich, as we say. But this is the draw deck, in which it has movement and sometimes also a special bonus thing. The way the draw deck works. Oh, and how you win? Complete traps. The number of traps you put out and the level of the traps. There's a little bone there that tells you what level the traps are. That is the number of traps you put out is determined by player count. The level of the traps is the number of bones up there in the corner, and that is the number of traps per number of things per card, tokens per card you've got to get. But the nifty thing, the truly nifty thing is there are 3 slots on the board for the draw deck. Oh, yes, there is. And the mechanism for this is so cool. I mean, I just love this. Because usually, again, when decks run out, the game is over and the monster gets you. But not here. I mean, that will happen. That can happen. But what you do is, for your turn, everybody takes 2 cards. And they choose one to play now and one to put in the save deck. So you have a draw deck, and right beneath it you have a save deck. So you take a card, so that means that you'll draw through this deck, and then half of these cards will go into the save deck. Now, when you have played your card, it goes into the discard deck. There's a mechanism on the board where you can save cards and move them from the discard into the save deck. When the draw deck runs out, then the save deck becomes the draw deck. And again, you draw 2 cards, put one into save and one you discard after using it. So you can actually work the deck, both in terms of which cards you choose to play and which cards you choose to save to play later. Like sometimes the card I will choose not to play now is one that I know will be more useful later in the game. But also, and you have that kind of diminishing returns, because each time that draw deck runs out, there are fewer cards in the save deck because it's like half of the draw deck. But there's a mechanism where you can save cards and like move cards from discard into the save deck. And then of course the save deck is what you draw on when the draw deck runs out. So, and of course, then you just, and of course, when the draw deck runs out, those go into discard, and those cards from discard can be moved into the save, which then becomes the draw deck. So it's a really nifty mechanism. It really, really is. And we work that really well. It was tougher to work that, that mechanism when it was just 2 of us. Let me see if I can put this back on here the right way. It was tougher to work that mechanism when there was just 2 of us, but, and maybe I can't. I'll put that away later. Oh, and the board is very cute. They've got the malt shop and all the usual locations. But because with 2 players, you need to be able to work you need to be able to gather the tokens to defeat the monster. The monster is also going to be putting out monster tokens that you're going to need to remove. Areas can become haunted. When they become haunted, you can't use their action, meaning getting cards or getting tokens to complete traps. But it flows beautifully. It really, really does. This is a really good family game, and it's not too kiddified. The adults who like Scooby-Doo will also really enjoy this game. And like I said, it's got some really nifty mechanics that sort of set it apart from games that draw heavily on the pandemic style of gameplay for co-ops. But yeah, this is a winner. I mean, this is really a winner. We could not have chosen better ourselves. And they bought it from the local game store, our local game store, and that's not too far from us. And we had picked it up and looked at it the last time we were in there, and I said, I want to do a little bit more research on this. And then it turned up for Christmas. But before Christmas, you see if I'm covering everything here. Yeah. Oh yeah, we did not play Fuji Flush with the family, even though I'd gotten that to play with the family over the Christmas holidays. Because what happened is, we didn't play anything on Christmas Day because we were doing present exchange and a cookout at their place. And then when we saw them later, they wanted to play the Scooby-Doo game because we were raving about it. So we played that with them later. So we played it at 2 and at 4 because we didn't have the full fam there. But we did, during that break between Christmas and New Year's, play 2 games we got on sale for the Christmas sales before Christmas. One was Agricola, the big box of All Creatures Big and Small. Now, unlike the regular Agricola, this is made for 2, just for 2. The big box has a bunch of extra buildings in it, which is really nice. We are still working on the basic game. I mean, we played the basic game and we're like going, like the beginner level in this, and we're going like, wow. We really did not optimize our animals or our use of the land there. There's no growing things like in the regular Agricola. You don't have to worry about your people starving to death or anything. You have workers, you have animals, and you have fields. So you're thinking like, wow, simplified, really simplified. And I'm going like, yeah, but boy, I mean, we made a real mess of it. But here's the thing. We had a lot of fun making a real mess of it. And that is the sign of a good game. And for those of you who don't know, designed by Uwe Rosenberg, who designed the original Agricola. But yeah, if you play primarily at 2, and you like Uwe Rosenberg games and worker placement, and this is a tight little game. And if I can find it, I'll put a link below to Monique and Naveen's playthrough of it, teach and playthrough of it, which was really good and helped us a lot, even though we made a real mess of it. Oh man, you just don't even want to know what my fields look like after this. Oh, but we had a lot of fun playing that. And the other game that we got before Christmas that we had not yet played is, no doggies, is Raiders of the North Sea. You may notice it says underneath here, Viking Edition. And that means that most of the pieces are cardboard instead of the more deluxeified editions. But it's still a nice game. This is the first trilogy of the Garfield Games trilogies that includes all of those West Kingdom and South Tigris games. And I guess since they've got North, West, and South, I'm betting East is coming up next once they wrap up South. But it's got a beautiful board. It's worker placement. It's very, very simple. I mean, in terms of learning how to play it, I mean, I'm sure we could have done a better job of optimizing our play. But when I saw this was on sale less than $20 for the Viking edition, which was made for like more mass market retail. And I thought I should give it a try because I hear such great things about the Garfield game series, West Kingdom and South Tigris, something of this and that and the other. And I had looked up this series on Garfield game series on BGG, and the North Sea series is much lighter weight than most of the games that came after that. There's Raiders of the North Sea, Explorers of the North Sea, and I think the first one was Shipwrights of the North Sea, which they're going to do over next year. There's a Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux or something. But they are all under 3.0 in terms of weight. So if you're curious about these Garfield Games trilogies and you kind of want to, just sort of see what they're all about, but the weight of some of the later games intimidates you because we tend to be very cautious about games that are rated on BGG as over 3.0. It's not that I don't think we could learn how to play heavier weight games, and we do have some games that are heavier weight, but we're very choosy about which ones we get. It's not that we think that we can't learn them. I think we could, but it's just that from what I've seen watching people play games, a lot of times the heavier weight games, they are very, very rules heavy, and there's just like a whole ton of stuff going on, and it's like, okay, you've got 12 actions that you can take, but you must take 3 actions this time and 4 actions that time, and you cannot take this action as your first action, and then that action must do this, and you must do this before you do that, and then at the end of that you need to put this here, and that will score there, but you cannot, and I mean, it just goes on and on. And I mean, it's like, and you're going like, okay, tab A goes into slot B, tab C goes into slot D. And I mean, and it just feels, I mean, you're watching people play and you're going like, I'm sure people are having fun playing this, but it looks very grindy. It's like, okay, it seems too much like work. That's a problem with some of the heavier games, is that they seem too much like work. They're very, very grindy. You've got like a gazillion different rules, and you've got all of these different things that you've got to do. It's impossible to optimize stuff. You're just going like, because you've got these choices. And I mean, there comes a time where games are so hard, they're not fun, because you're just powering your way through them, trying to get to the blankety blank end. And I don't know, the heavier Garfield games may be a delight for us to play. I don't know that though. I just know that heavier games I need to research very, very carefully because some of them do not look like fun. So we choose our heavier weight games very carefully. And what I was thinking of doing is basically inching our way up into the heavier games of the Garfield game series, starting with the North Sea trilogy, because the North Sea trilogy, all of the games are below 3.0 in terms of their BGG weight, the heaviness, the difficulty of the game. I'm not talking about how heavy the game is, the difficulty of the game. So we're gonna mess around with the North Sea a little bit. And we did really enjoy playing this. This was very satisfying, and that's another thing. I will say, though the gameplay is very simple, it does present you with some interesting choices, and gameplay is very satisfying. It may be way too light for those of you who like the heavier games, but that's going to be true of a lot of games I talk about on this channel. Way too light for some of you. But yeah, we're going to mess around in the North Sea for a while and then decide if we want to move on to West Kingdom. And I think that that's not a bad way of doing it, considering that we have a very cautious approach to heavier weight games, because I do feel like that there's kind of a diminishing returns as you get to heavier and heavier games, that they become less and less fun. And that's not true of all games. We do have some heavier weight games in our collection that we enjoy tremendously. But I feel like that with games over 3.0, we need to be very careful and very cautious. Otherwise, we could end up with a very expensive game that makes us utterly miserable to play. So we are tiptoeing into the Garfield Games trilogy, easing our way in ever so slowly. But we did enjoy this. If you can find the Viking edition, it's going to be less expensive than the full thingy, and it plays just as well. And it's good entry level if you want to just dip your toes into the waters here. The waters of the North Sea. And finally, I got a Grail game. I got the only Grail game left on my list. I only had 2 Grail games on my list. One was Pachacuna, which I got last fall because a very nice person was selling it, and I offered it for sale on Discord. But the other Grail game, the game I have wanted for a while now, since I found out it existed, since it was released in Germany, is Carcassonne Winter Edition. I played the Winter Edition digitally like all winter long, every winter. This edition, which is the 2nd edition, I believe there is a 3rd, according to Wikicarpedia. Carcassonne fans out there, there's a wiki called Wikicarpedia. That's one word, and it is like a complete rules wiki and tells you everything about all of the Carcassonne stuff. But this has the river expansion in it. Yes, we've got a winter river. It looks like it's flowing, so perhaps not a frozen winter, a frozen river. I do not recall seeing skaters on it. But every winter I do run searches for this, and I know it's just, it does not include the Gingerbread Man expansion, I should say that, and I do want that. So I do have 1 expansion still left out there on my Grail Games list of hard to find things. But I was running a search to find out if there was about the next edition, because I'd read that there was another edition of this. And this popped up, a link for a vendor on Amazon selling the 2nd edition, the WE2 as they call it on Wikicarpedia edition, with the river. And I clicked through and it took me to the US Amazon. But it was shipping from Germany, from a company in Germany. So I got it, and we love it. But also, I think this means I'm kind of a real board gamer now, because I am now one of those people that ordered a foreign language game from another country. You know, it's like, and I do speak a few words of German. It's like I've picked up like a little bit of tourist German, even though I haven't been to Germany. But yeah, we already know how to play this, so it doesn't matter that the entire thing is in German. But I'm just so thrilled to have this, and the artwork on this is much prettier than the digital edition. I think I'm going to just put some inserts up here to show you what the artwork looks like, because the artwork is very, very pretty. We have already played this game 7 times since we got it, and we got it on January 2nd. And that's half as many times as we played the regular Carcassonne last year. So yeah, this is actually hitting the table fairly often in the evenings, not just on weekends. So we are very, very happy to have this, and we are enjoying it a lot. And an interesting thing is, I have not compared the tile distribution of this to the tile distribution of regular Carcassonne, but I'm thinking it must be somewhat different, because Robert is winning a lot more games of this than he wins of the other one. I am struggling to keep up with him. He is right now the undisputed master of Winter Carcassonne. And I don't know why, because it's like I'm playing this every day, but Carcassonne is his favorite game. But there's something about the winter edition that really clicked with him, and so we are battling to the death in Carcassonne. Now, one downside to this, I will say, is it doesn't have any scoring tiles with it. It didn't come with any tiles that say 50 or 100, so we just like wrote 50 and 100 on a couple of pieces of paper and stuck them in the box to flip over when we go round the scoring board. But I thought that was really unusual. I mean, they did like a winter themed scoring board, and you flip it over, it's got a beautiful winter scene and everything, but they don't have any of those little tiles that you flip to show that you have gone around the board once and have hit 50 or twice and hit 100. And we do score high in this, so we definitely needed to write down little slips of paper to keep track of what we were scoring. But that is what we have been doing, in addition to playing a whole bunch of other little small box games here and there, since Christmas. And it's been good sitting around the table just talking about what we have been doing, and boy, have we been playing games. And we are going to be playing some more too. I have pulled out some games that are kind of winter themed. I mean, besides Winter Carcassonne. And we're going to dip into some kind of winter or winter adjacent themed games this coming weekend, which will be a 3-day weekend for us. So I should have some interesting stuff to talk about next week too. Until then, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. It's nice hanging out with you around the table. I'll see you next time.